Hello?
Hello, Jeremy.
Is this Tina?
Yes, it is. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Can you guys hear okay?
What's new on your end down there?
Well, just hanging out in jail, enjoying my four walls and a little bit of sunshine coming through my very small window. But other than that, just another day counting down to the restoration of justice, hopefully.
Amen.
Yes, yes. Were you affected at all by the hurricane that went through?
I was mainly affected by the hyperbole. We had excessive hyperbole. It did rain, but I was protected by. We have this special technology here. It's called a roof, and so the rain did not kill me. And we didn't lose power because it was just rain.
Yeah.
And once again, I lavished in the incorrect predictions of the hysterical meteorologists. So, but no, we're perfectly fine here.
Good.
Believe it or not, there's actually hurricanes hit Florida almost every year. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure why everybody is so hysterical, but hey.
It's not like it's a 100-year occurrence.
Yeah, everyone's afraid that they're going to die from a hurricane, but yet they have no problem with being rounded up by the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around that, but maybe I'll figure it out someday.
Yeah. Well, we have a couple of people here who are, I guess, new to the vigil. Both of them are friends of mine. We have Kathy and Doug here. And so if you wouldn't mind to share a little bit of your story with them, because they are not familiar with a lot of what you did and what happened and all of that.
Yeah, so absolutely. Basically, my story is kind of an outlier of the other January 6th defendants. 99.9% of who were all just caught up in a government operation to target the American citizenry. And I know this because my background is in special operations. I spent 20 years in Army Special Operations, 17 years of that as an Army Green Beret. And I retired in 2012 as a Master Sergeant from the Special Operations Command Central, where I was a non-commissioned officer in charge of the Special Activities Branch, which handles policy oversight for covert, clandestine, and compartmentalized operations, much like what you saw, but yet maybe don't recognize that what you saw on January 6th. And so in November of 2020, just after the completely obviously stolen election, I reached out to a group known as the Oath Keepers, and I held basically a meeting with the Oath Keepers, which has since been revealed that there was a FBI informant in that meeting, which is funny because the Oath Keepers at the time had not ever been convicted or even accused of any crimes, and yet for some reason the FBI had infiltrated this group of American citizens. But I met with them and explained to them that as a pro-constitutional governing group, a group that by its very name has sworn to uphold their oath, and that oath being the oath that you can find in Title 10 of the U.S. Code, which is the oath to support and defend the U.S. Constitution. Yeah, this is the far right-wing group, the group that wants to keep their oath to the Constitution, which when you're a tyrant and you're a globalist or a communist or a Marxist or whatever ist you want to be called, you're definitely not on board with the Constitution. So this is the group that I met with, and I warned them that they were about to be targeted for destruction and what we would call the mop-up operations. And these are operations that when you have in a third world country, you have the banana republic that you see on the NBC nightly news, the military overthrow of this guy or that guy, and everyone gets thrown up in jail. Well, what happens afterwards are these mop-up operations. The new power goes around and basically arrests murderers the ill power. And so I was warning them that this is what was about to happen to groups like the Oath Keepers, to groups like the Three Percenters, or the Proud Boys, or any group that stands up to support and defend the U.S. Constitution. And, I since now know from FBI interviews with a lot of the people that attended that meeting that they basically took it as kind of a joke. Some of them made comments about how I was blowing things out of proportion. But, hey, what do I know? I only spent 20 years of my military career being an expert in this type of warfare. 3 weeks later, I was approached by the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force. And again, remember, there was a confidential human source in that meeting. I have the form, that confidential human source's report form in my discovery. And so they knew exactly what the meeting was about. They knew exactly what I did in the meeting. And so instead of them investigating me as some right-wing wacko, they showed up with an offer to, in essence, infiltrate further the Oath Keepers with a what we would refer to as a soft pitch, right? Or, they basically were gauging my interest in working with them by throwing out that they could pay me and all these other things. But I recorded that meeting. And, of course, this meeting took place December 9th of 2020, which was 10 full days before there ever was a January 6th. See, the president didn't tweet about January 6th until December 19th, 10 days later. Okay. But yet in that recording, you hear the agents clearly mention that they were interested in if anything were to happen in January, right? And so it's very interesting that these two agents from the Department of Homeland Security would mention something happening in January when nothing had even been announced to be happening in January. And so I didn't think nothing of it at the time. Later that month, after the president had announced the January 6th rally, I decided to reach out to the Oath Keepers and volunteer to be part of their volunteer security detail, which were basically providing escorts for the organizers and the speakers at that Stop the Steal rally. So the Oath Keepers weren't there as part of the protest. They were there to protect those that were part of the protest. And so, the events of January 6th happened the way that they did, but yet immediately the heads of our government, Congress, the president, lead agencies within the law enforcement and intelligence community came out with this narrative of the overthrow of American government and how it was worse than Pearl Harbor and worse than 9/11. It was a completely false narrative. So I immediately knew at that time that this was the event where they were going to basically, designate the Oath Keepers, the Three Percenters, the Proud Boys as patsies in this war on the American people. So it took me a couple of months, but finally I went public with that recording. For 7 months, I did scores of interviews on independent and alternative media sources, the only ones that would even touch my story. Right. And then after 7 months of blowing the whistle, and 10 months after January 6th, the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force showed up at my property with an arrest warrant for 2 misdemeanor counts, and yet they showed up with a force of about 15 to 20 federal agents in body armor and long guns. And they also had a search warrant based on a domestic terrorism investigation, and they miraculously found explosives and classified materials in my RV, and so they charged me with felonies. And about a year and a quarter later, 439 days after being held without bond, basically on no charges at all, other than the judge just thinking that I was a threat to law enforcement. I was held without bond and taken to trial, and I was falsely convicted on 6 counts and sentenced to 87 months in a federal prison. And so here I sit in a jail cell still waiting for my trial for the 2 misdemeanors that originally showed up to arrest me for. And yet somehow, apparently, if I was the former president of the United States, I would have got a trial date right away. But since I'm not the president of the United States, I still don't have a trial date for my 2 misdemeanors, and I was arrested on September 30th of 2021. So since then, I've just been telling the American people that what they're seeing with their lying eyes is not the narrative that we've been fed by our government, but instead a modern-day burning of the Reichstag, where the government has staged an operation in order to blame a certain group of people so that they can justify rounding those people up, stripping them of their rights, imprisoning them at the rate of over 1,000 American citizens now under the claim that they attempted to overthrow the government, but yet they didn't have any weapons, and that they're all domestic terrorists. And so who they're referring to when they say domestic terrorists is you, if you believe that our government has lost its way and is no longer following the United States Constitution. So that's basically my story.
Do you have any questions, Kath?
I have no questions. You just tell him.
Well, here.
I appreciate how much. You know, Jeremy, I accidentally started this Patriot group, and it was an accident right after January happened. The event happened, and I started it out of sadness and frustration, and we've grown to probably 200 active members and 800 that are on the roster. And we'll keep your story alive. Believe me, all of you. And I just want you to know.
Amen. Well said.
Well, and I appreciate that. And the reason why it's important is because they don't want my story known.
No.
Just like they didn't want you to know about Ray Epps, and they don't want you to know about Capitol Police Chief Steve Son, or former FBI Special Agent Steve Friend. They don't want you to know these stories because they directly contradict and contradict their false narrative of January 6th. And keep in mind that this isn't just January 6th. I mean, we just had 5 pro-life activists that were sentenced or that were charged and convicted of felonies for simply showing up to pray for young women who are being lied to by the multi-billion-dollar abortion industry. You know, an industry that basically kills babies for the body parts that they can sell on the medical materials market. And, you know, they're convicted of felonies. I think they're facing over 10 years. I mean, you just saw in this last week multiple Proud Boys that are sentenced to, you know, 10-plus years in prison for exercising their First Amendment rights. Now, did some of them engage in some things that they got caught up in the moment? Sure they did, because that's exactly what this type of warfare is designed to do.
Right.
You know, they put provocateurs in the crowd in order to appeal to those that will succumb to a mob mentality.
Yeah.
And yet, in New York, the 2 attorneys that burned the police car, you know, they got like 18 months, I think, or did barely any time. Look at the protesters that besieged D.C. for 2-3 weeks, that chased the President of the United States into the bunker and injured and wounded, you know, over 100 uniformed Secret Service agents. There's been no convictions. There's been no claims of insurgency or seditious conspiracy against those groups, because those are the groups that they want to create chaos. And so we really, as Americans, need to wake up to what is going on and, you know, stop telling ourselves that could never happen in America, because I have a 20-year special operations career that is here to tell you it is happening in America, and that's exactly what happened in America, and that's the reason why they don't want you to know who I am.
Hopefully, we can arrange one of our meeting nights.
You have 1 minute left.
Okay. Listen, God bless you. We're praying for you. Hopefully, we can get you on one of our meeting nights, and I'll step off here now.
Well, I certainly appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak, and yeah, whenever you want to have me on again, or any other groups, please just let my girlfriend know, and she'll be more than happy to get that all arranged.
Jeremy, you're welcome to call back if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the questions, I can call back. I've got time. You want me to call back?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and call back?
All right, give me just a minute.
Okay.
You know?